Hello and welcome to another installment of FormatC:.com tutorials. In these tutorials we pick apart and explore topics pertaining to desktop platforms, server administration, network administration, virtualization, web development, and pretty much everything in between. For more in-depth information on any of our topics, please visit our site at www.FormatC.com, where you can find a full step-by-step text version of all of the commands and steps performed in each of the video tutorials here, along with tons more videos including tips, tricks, and much more.
Hello again, and welcome to another FormatC.com tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to go through the installation and configuration of Puppet. What Puppet is essentially a configuration server that runs off of a Linux server that is able to push out different configuration sets to various types of machines. So what does that mean? That essentially means that we can set up any number of physical or virtual servers, and then we can actually connect it to the Puppet server, and the Puppet server can control certain configuration files that get pushed down to the server. And we are able to basically clump all of our servers into different groups. So we might maybe want to make a standard configuration for HTTPD for our Apache server, for instance, and apply it to a cluster of web servers. And we can easily do that by just putting all of the web servers via the agent into a group inside of Puppet that's set up to be able to push that particular configuration file and maybe more configuration files down to the server. So it's a very, very handy tool to use in your infrastructure, especially if you're a heavy Linux shop, and even if you're not, even if you're a Windows shop, then there are definitely a bunch of different Puppet recipes that can be pushed down to various Windows machines, Windows clients as well. So very useful tool to have. The installation is not overly complicated, but it is a little complicated, so we're just going to go ahead and dive right in and get started with installing it. All the documentation for Puppet can be found on the Puppet Labs website, so all you have to do is just go to docs.puppetlabs.com/guides, and then there will be a bunch of different installation guides for installing various components of Puppet. There's also a very big online repository for various Puppet recipes, and what recipe is essentially they are the classes or the instruction sets needed to be able to push various types of configuration files or do installations or whatever. Because I mean, you can even script like installations and just apply a Puppet recipe to a server that will install certain packages that you've predefined. So you could actually set up, like, let's say that you have web servers set up a certain way, and you need development servers set up exactly the way that production is, and you need everything consistent across the board. You could actually even set up a Puppet recipe that would actually install all the software and put it into a particular order, so that it's always consistent. And anytime you spin up a new virtual machine, you apply that Puppet recipe to it, it would automatically look exactly like the rest of the servers that you set up. And be 100% consistent. So we are going to be kind of going along with the installation docs found on Puppet. I kind of have been able to take those and kind of shrink them down to an easier format and just going over the stuff that we absolutely need instead of having to weed through the various components where it kind of separates the installation and the differences between CentOS or Red Hat Linux installations versus Ubuntu installations. We will be installing this on a CentOS 6.5 machine. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to need to do before we install any of the Puppet components is install NTP. And so the two things that I'm going to do here, again, I have a CentOS 6.5 machine here. So if I cat etc Red Hat release, you'll see that I've got CentOS 6.5 installed. This is a bare bones minimum machine. I've got pretty much nothing installed on this machine. The first thing that I am going to do though is I want to change the host name, and then I also want to change or install NTP. That is the first prerequisite that is needed, and really the only prerequisite that's needed. So in order to change the host name, I need to go to etc sysconfig network, and we're just going to go up to right here where it says demo, and we're just going to name this server puppet.mydomain. Yeah, that's fine. Let's say mydomain.local. Okay, and then I'm also going to install yum install NTP. Whoops. No slashes. And then I'm going to go ahead and just reboot the server so that way it takes the host name and effectively sets it where it needs to set it. Nice little tidbit that in CentOS 7, when you change the host name, you actually no longer need to reboot. So that's pretty exciting. Looking forward to using CentOS 7 a little bit more. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and reboot the server. Okay, and now we're back into the Puppet server. I have some SSH keys set up on my particular demo, so I no longer have to type in passwords. I might do a video on how to do that, just for those of you that don't know how to do that. And essentially, it just automatically authenticates my client machine when it sees a connection coming in from my client machine via an authorized key file. Then, which I'm not going to show you because it would obviously be my keys. Then it will just automatically authenticate, and a password is not required. So I'll do a video on that at a later date. But anyway, the first thing that we need to do is actually install the Puppet repository. And so we have a couple of different repository options here. If basically this first document that we're looking at here is just the pre-installation document, and really the only thing that we needed to do there was just the timekeeping, which was NTP. So then we can go down here and click on Red Hat, and you'll see right here on the main installation document for Puppet, you'll see that we have a couple of different options as far as the repository is concerned. So there is actually a CentOS 7 repository, which is cool. Just because of the unknowns and lack of experience so far with CentOS 7, I'm opting to do this on CentOS 6. There has been quite a bit of change in CentOS 7, so just for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to get into that right now. But eventually, as we move forward, I'm going to be starting to do some more stuff with CentOS 7. So what we want here is we want this CentOS 6 repository, so I'm just going to copy this guy. Okay, and once the repository is installed, we do need to edit the repository. So of course, as with all repositories, the repository file itself is going to be stored in etc yum.repos.d. And then if we take a look now, we've got the Puppet Labs repo. So let's go ahead and edit the Puppet Labs repo. And all we need to do in here is go down to this Devel, Puppet Labs Devel section, and we need to enable that. So we're just going to set enable to 1. Okay, and then what we need to do is do a yum clean all, and then we're going to do a yum install Puppet server. Okay, and once Puppet is installed, the next thing that we need to do is we need to edit the main Puppet configuration file, and we need to add entries for any DNS names that the server is going to respond to. So let's go ahead and open that file, and those configuration files are all going to be found in /etc/puppet. So if I open up the puppet.conf file, underneath this main section right here, all I need to do is just go down here to the bottom of that section, and I'll throw in a comment. And the directive is going to be DNS alt names equals, and it's because we named this server Puppet, I'm going to obviously respond to Puppet and puppet.mydomain.local, and that should be sufficient. So let's go ahead and save that file. And then the next thing that we need to do is we need to actually set up these certificates. So the way that Puppet is going to communicate with all of its clients, there's going to be a certificate involved. So essentially when we start bringing up clients, the client is going to send a certificate request, and the Puppet server needs to actually issue the certificate or a certificate to the client. And then it uses that that certificate to set up a secure session between the client and the server to push those configuration sets. So essentially, our Puppet server is going to kind of act as its own kind of CA for its own clients. And so we need to set that component up, which is actually fairly easy. All we need to do is just type in Puppet master -- verbose -- no daemonize. And that will go ahead and set the certificates up for us. So you'll see here, if we take a look at the information, it created a new certificate revocation list, a new SSL key for Puppet, created some attributes, created SSL certificate request for Puppet, then it signed that request, and then it removed its temporary files. And when you see this starting Puppet master version, with the version number, just go ahead and hit Control-C. We're not quite ready to start the Puppet server yet, so just hit Control-C and interrupt that. We don't want that to start quite yet. We need a couple of more things here. The next thing we need to do is kind of set up manifests and modules. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to create the shell. We're not actually going to create any manifests at this point. And what a manifest is basically a set of rules or a list of classes that the Puppet server is going to load to set or push those configuration files or configuration sets down to the client. So we're not going to set any of that stuff up yet, any of the rules that it's actually able to use against clients. We just want to get the server up and running, and then we will do a video later on about maybe creating some manifests and actually pushing those manifests out. So the way that I like to do it is I like to kind of keep things organized into different directories. So I like to have a different directory with different manifests and different modules for maybe my different environment types, like production, development, DMZ, web servers, etc. So what I'm going to do is what we're going to do is we're going to set it up so that it'll operate in that fashion. And the way that we can do that is fairly easy. All we need to do is make a couple of directories first. So let's go ahead and cd into the Etsy Puppet directory. And you'll see that if I do an ls, I've already got this directory called environments. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to change directories into that environments folder. And right now there's nothing in there other than an example environment. And if I do an ls -lah on the example, then you'll see that inside of that example directory I have manifests and I have modules. So all I need to do really is just create a new directory for each one of the environment types that I would like, and then inside of that main directory I'm going to create a manifests and a modules directory so that I'll have a place to store both the manifests and the modules for each environment type. So do a make dir -p, and the P is for parent, so it will create any directories in its directory path. So for instance, right now we're going to make a new directory called production /manifest, and you'll notice that we don't have a production folder in the environments folder, but with the -p it'll actually first create the production folder, and then inside of the production folder it'll create the manifest folder. So let's do that, and then modules, and then we'll do the same thing for let's say development. And then modules. So now if we look, now we've got the development and the production folders, and if I look in either one of those, I have the manifests and the modules folder like I need. Now what we need to do is we need to tell Puppet that these folders exist, and the way that we're going to do that is, again, to edit the Etsy puppet.config file. And again, down here underneath where we put the alternate DNS names, all I'm going to do is just tell it that I want it to look inside of the location for these environment directories. So let's say tell Puppet where the environmental directory live. Okay, and the variable is going to be environment path, and that's going to just equal config_environments. And what config_dir is config_dir is essentially set to /etc/puppet. So we're basically telling it the environment path is /etc/puppet/environments. And so let's go ahead and save that. And so now what we can do is we can actually, so Puppet ships with a default web server called like WebBrick or something to that nature, which even Puppet Labs admit that it's actually kind of crap and it's not really to be used for production workload or anything like that. But we can bring it up in order to be able to just test Puppet and make sure that Puppet is actually working. So we can go ahead and we can do that quickly. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start that service. And so that service is just going to be Puppet Master. So let's go ahead and start the Puppet Master service. And it's actually giving me an error because it is not config_dir, it's conf_dir. And this is exactly why we're doing this. That way we test the Puppet Master config file as well, or the Puppet config file, to make sure that we don't have any errors and it can parse it correctly. And so what's starting the Puppet Master service also does is it makes sure that it sets up all the certificates correctly and puts them in their right places and basically just initializes the entire environment. So after we start the service, we can just immediately go ahead and stop the service because it's not going to really do anything. We just wanted to, we definitely don't want to use that WebBrick web service. What we want to do instead is we want to set this up to run off of Apache. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to set up an application called Passenger, and what Passenger does is it essentially is kind of like a liaison between Puppet and Apache. So it will basically take Puppet and conform it the way that it needs to be conformed to be able to be served via Apache, which is going to be more of a production web server instance. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and install Apache and a couple of development tools that we're going to need. So let's do a yum install httpd for the Apache, httpd-devel, mod SSL we'll need, Ruby devel we'll need, Ruby gems we will need, and GCC we will need. Okay. And then the next thing we want to do is make sure that Apache starts on boot. So let's do a check config httpd start on. All right, and then the next thing we need to do is install Passenger, which is going to be that liaison like I was talking about. So the way that we're going to do that, now that we have gem installed via Ruby, we're going to go ahead and just type in gem install rack passenger. Okay, and once that completes, then we need to actually launch the installer for Passenger, and we can just do that by typing in passenger-apache2-module. And that's going to bring us up to a little CLI installer, so we're just going to hit enter to continue. We're going to go ahead and use any spaces for languages that we may want to install. Just Ruby, Python is fine, so let's go ahead and click next or enter, and then it's going to go through and it's going to look and it says, let's see, so we've got a couple of dependencies that are not here. It can't find curl config and it can't find the zlib library, but don't worry about it, it's going to tell you how to go ahead and install that, which is right here. So we want to make sure that we have these dependencies right here installed, so let's do that. Yum install, and we can just grab these guys. curl devel, OpenSSL, and the zlibs devel. And then once that's done, then we can go ahead and rerun that installer. And now you'll see everything is found, so we're looking good. And then it's going to go through a bunch of compilation, and it's going to actually compile the modules that it needs. So this is going to take a couple minutes. Okay, and then it says it's all set essentially, so you just got to press enter to continue. And now what we need to do is actually configure Apache to use Passenger, and that's going to basically all be handled by the Apache vhost file. So luckily, again, if we take a look inside of the installation documentation here for Puppet, we actually can go down here and, let's see, click on the post install tasks button from the main installation document. And so under this post install URL, we will be able to find a section right here called configuring a production ready web server. So let's click on that, and there we can find a link that will give us instructions on how to set up Passenger. So we can go ahead and click on that link, and inside of here we can actually just kind of scroll down, and we see that it gives us an example vhost configuration file. And this can also be found on the website. I'm going to have step-by-step instructions on formatccolon.com where you found this video. So this the copy of the modified Apache config file will be found there as well. So for now, let's go ahead and just grab this guy right off the website, and we're just going to copy this and go back to our Puppet installer, and we need to create an Apache vhost file. So let's do a let's open the file by typing in vim/etc http.conf or httpd conf.d, and then we will just call this puppet.conf, and let's just paste that file right in here. And we do need to modify a couple of things. So if we go back up to the top, let's take a look here. We go down. The first thing is that they're going to have two blocks right here that are going to be commented out. And so because we're installing this on RHEL or CentOS, we need to uncomment this block right here. And also, this is going to have to be modified because you'll notice here inside of the passenger module statement, we've got this 4.0.x, right? So we've got a specific version of Passenger installed, and obviously if we try to go to this location right now, which is the user lib rubies gems 1.8 gems passenger 4.0.x, that's not going to exist because there's actually a version number there. So the easiest way to find that is I'm just going to copy this mod passenger.so statement. I'm going to save this Apache config file, and then I'm going to make sure that I have a program called mlocate installed. Let me just grab that real quick. And what that does is that's basically an index of your file system so that we can easily find files. And then we can just do an update DB, which will populate that database real quick, or that index. And then what I'll be able to do is just do a locate and paste in that mod passenger.so file. And it'll give me the path to the particular mod _passenger.so that I actually need. So I'm going to just copy this whole line right here. Oops. Control C. And then we're going to go ahead and edit that config file again. And now where I have that load module statement, I'm actually going to get rid of all of this after the passenger_module statement, and I'm going to paste in the location that we just found via locate. And then I also want to make sure that I update the passenger route, so that's going to be everything up until the build out. So let's copy that, and again we'll get rid of this, and we're going to paste it in there. So we're using specifically 4.0.46, and then let's just go through here. The other thing is if we're not using Apache 2.4, which we're not, we're using Apache 2.2. This directive does not mean anything yet, so we're going to need to comment out that SSL revocation check. And then the other thing is going to be that our certificates now, it's not going to be puppet-server.example. So again, let me copy this location. And then I'm going to just save the file, quit, and then do an ls for that location. And that will give me the actual PEM name. So you'll see that it's just puppet.pem. So again, let's go ahead and modify this config file one more time. And underneath SSL certificate file, we just need to change the name of the certificate to what it actually is in that location, which is just puppet.pem. And we can assume that it's going to be the same thing for the key. And the rest of this stuff should be good to go. I don't think we need to modify any of that other stuff, so let's go ahead and quit the file. The next thing that we want to do is we want to just set the server name directive in the Apache config file. So I'm going to edit the etc httpd conf httpd.conf file, which is the main Apache configuration file. And I'm just going to do a search by typing / and look for server name. And we've got this example right here, so what we can do is just uncomment that out. And I can go ahead and just type in puppet.mydomain.local to set that server name. We're going to go ahead and save that file. And then all we need to do is try to start Apache, so see if it works. Okay, it looks like it did start. We don't have, let me just take a look here at this and we'll make sure that this path is correct. And it is not, so let's see, ls user share. See if we can find it here. Puppet. Let's just do a locate. Okay, so that directory location does not exist yet, so we need to actually create that directory location. So let's stop Apache, and let's go ahead and create that directory location. So we're going to do again a make dir-p /user share puppet rack puppet master d, and then the public directory. We could actually put that all in one spot. We also need the temp directory. And then we need to copy user share puppet ext rack config.ru, which is the rack configuration file, to /user /share puppet rack puppet master d. And then we also need to make sure, very importantly, to chown that to be used and accessible by the Puppet user and the Puppet group. Okay, and then let's go ahead and restart Apache. Okay, and so Apache started up clean. So as it's loading passenger, we can see that Puppet is now installed and up and running. If Puppet didn't come up clean, then the Apache would have failed to start. If passenger failed, then Apache would have failed to start. So the only indication that we kind of have here for right now is that it started up clean. So and we can also check if we notice by the Puppet config file, we can see that Apache is listening, or should be listening, on 8140 for Puppet requests. So if we do a netstat-anl and grep for 8140, we can see that the server is listening on that port, so we are good to go. So that's basically all there is to installing Puppet. stay tuned, and there's going to be another tutorial video in the next couple of minutes that I'm going to be producing to actually install the dashboard onto Puppet. And once we have the dashboard installed on the Puppet, then we'll kind of have like a visual interface as to kind of see what's going on, with Puppet, so we can run reports and see nodes and, just get a visual kind of look at, the Puppet service. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to check out some of the other videos. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button below. Also, feel free to leave me any comments, suggestions, requests, anything in the comment section below. Definitely like hearing from you guys, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. So until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.